And a very good afternoon, Phuket. Nick Anthony here. Coming up in just a few moments, Going Green, show number 99. We're getting close to the ton. It is, of course, Saturday, 16th of November, and we've got a great show lined up for you today. Firstly, we're going to review COP19, which is actually the climate change summit taking place in Warsaw. And I'm going to discuss some of the things that are being discussed this week in COP19 through the eyes of the IUCN. It's the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, one of the world's biggest environmental bodies. The IPCC, the International Panel for Climate Change chairman, says that we may pass on a lousy, spoilt, and defiled planet. We'll take a look at his comments and put that into context, also with relation to the COP19 in Warsaw. Businesses are standing up against non-renewables in a guide to activism that's been published. Very interesting and unusual. It's supported by IKEA as well as UNEP and various other NGOs. We'll talk about the Philippines, give you an update there on the damage this week from what is the world's biggest typhoon. And we'll be looking at, on the nature side, dolphin hunters in Japan who unfortunately had a good week. They stole a bunch of dolphins out of the ocean and indeed at the same time were ruthless in the killing of those they did not choose to go into dolphin shows. Do not watch dolphin shows, do not support dolphin shows, and as we've been talking these last couple of weeks about the shows of SeaWorld on the west coast of America and what's happening there with Black Watch, the documentary, public outcries now against the captivity of dolphins and whales, which is very good news. In the UK this week, food producers, retailers and restaurants are being urged to join forces to secure a ban on all food waste going to landfill by 2020. It's a very bold national campaign by the UK and certainly something that we can learn here in Thailand and indeed here in Asia. We'll be checking in on the Arctic 30. They've now been holed up under prison guard for just over a month. Beatle Paul McCartney yesterday wrote an impassioned letter to Vladimir Putin. We'll bring you that information and also play you the Beatles song that was the inspiration for this letter back in the USSR. So watch out for that song in the first hour. Locally, we were at the Prince of Songkhla University Open Day on Thursday and Friday. Fabulous event, well done to Kunchantani. It was focusing on sustainability and had an excellent climate change talk by a Korean lecturer, one of actually the Korean leading environmentalists. Mr. Jong, and he talking about the problems that we have. Effectively, our house is on fire, and currently we're not putting any water on it, i.e. it will burn down, and that's an acronym, of course, for the state of the planet. Locally, SEEK has been working on an island-wide sustainability plan that will be finalized this week and presented on Friday. That's the 22nd of November at Outrigger Phuket, from 1 in the afternoon. It'll be an afternoon session with the Atkinson Group from Sweden, IUCN, WWF, SEEK, of course, and Phuket's governor. Also including administrative bodies such as the Marine, Environment, Health, Energy and Education Ministries. Local businesses will be there such as Tesco, hotels, green clubs, NGOs, and representatives from Phuket's local communities. An action-packed show. Show number 99 coming up shortly. Stay tuned. Good afternoon, Phuket. Nick Anthony back with you on Going Green, show number 99. I'm going to now be doing 2 more of these shows in a 2-hour format. And for regular listeners, we have appreciated greatly the amount of time you've spent sending us emails, calling up with requests, and of course many featured guests over the last 2 years. We're about to change the format starting after next weekend, after our final 100th show. And our Going Green show will be integrated completely into Class Act Media, the company behind the Phuket News, Live 89.5, and of course our Russian newspaper. And we're going to see an integration of green thinking, green strategies, and green news across all of the mediums: web, radio, TV, and of course print. So we're going to be segmenting this information more on a daily basis, more on a regular basis, and the format is going to shift somewhat. But it's going to be exciting nonetheless, and it's really fantastic, and I do applaud and thank the whole team from Class Act Media for their support over these last 100 shows, or just over 2 years. It's been an amazing journey. The journey has only just started. I will stay with the programs. We will continue to produce new shows, interviews, ensure that you're getting the best and greatest and most important green information as it happens. And with the amount of momentum that's been built up here in Phuket over these last 2 years, has been a sea change of support. We've now got amazing Green Club members all over the island. There's 12 Green Clubs now in effect. And yesterday at Prince Songkhla University, their open day, we've actually got confirmation now of 2 more. A small beach over in Krabi is starting up the first Green Club in Krabi, and also an orphanage up in Phang Nga province is also about to start the first Green Club in Phang Nga. So we're expanding, growing, and getting much better support from the community. So it's really thanks to all you listeners for your individual efforts. And when you go shopping and you talk to 7-Eleven, say thank you, no plastic. When you go to one of the big supermarkets and you request local organic food. When you say no to non-sustainable seafood. And indeed, when you reduce your chemical use and your plastic use. It does come down to all of us, and you all do make a fantastic difference. So again, thank you very much for all your support. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying on the island. I'm staying with the studio, but we're just going to change the format. So stay tuned for Going Green, show number 99. It's going to be a great show. We've got lots of information to talk about. And of course, talking of individual awareness, there are actually 7 primary direct drivers of extinction, and all are the result of our own human behavior. Of course, we have global pollution. We have climate change having a massive rate of impact now on rising sea levels, increasing CO2 levels in the atmosphere, increasing deforestation, and increasing erosion on our beaches and on our mountain sides. Other problems are introduction of invasive species. That is taking over local species and changing the natural environments. There continues to be here on our small island over-exploitation of resources. And above all, from a macro perspective, the factors that perhaps magnify all of the others: human overpopulation and consumerization. There is a place for consumerization, but it has to be green, it has to be eco, it has to be done in a way that doesn't impact our planet. Stay tuned. Nick Anthony here on Going Green, show number 99, and I'll be back in a few moments talking to you about the annual UN climate talks from the perspective of the IUCN. Nick Anthony back with you on Going Green, show number 99. This last week, and indeed going through to the 22nd of November next Friday, there's a convention on climate change taking place in Warsaw, Poland. This is the UNFCCC, COP19 is the acronym they use, and this is an annual UN-based climate talk, and this one is an important one. Not only must negotiators make substantial progress towards establishing the framework for the post-2015 climate change agreement, but they must continue to implement commitments already made. IUCN experts will be pushing the message that nature provides many of the solutions in tackling climate change and adapting to its impacts. While some countries and communities around the world are making progress in reducing their greenhouse gas emissions and adapting to the effects of climate change, the global community would do well to make far greater use of the solutions that nature offers us. Sustainably managing ecosystems such as forests, wetlands, and here on Phuket, our coastal areas, can simultaneously reduce carbon emissions and help women and men adapt to the impacts that are being felt across the world. IUCN, which is the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, a very well-known organization that also produced the Red List, highlighting species around the world that are under threat. They are encouraging the use of practical steps that will allow increased adoption of nature-based solutions. Governments should promote the inclusion of ecosystem-based adaptation, or EBA. These should be promoted in national policies, and they should take action to implement these methods on the ground. We are very fortunate that SEEK, which is a CSO, a civil service organization, which is hosting on Friday this week at our Outer Resort an island sustainability plan with the governor and about 100 representatives from private business, NGOs, local government and local communities. We've been working with IUCN on the sustainability plan. So the idea of nature-based solutions, at least for us on the island, is something we've already been planning for the last 2 years and started to implement with local Phuket government. The IUCN also promotes implementation of an environmentally sound and equitable forest climate mechanism. It's called RED, Reducing Emissions from Deforestation and Forest Degradation. It's a tool that both conserves forests' natural resources and reduces greenhouse gas emissions. RED can help the impacts of climate change, but also be effective in being able to teach governments to share the information, to encourage the participation of women and also of indigenous and local people. Ecosystem-based adaptation and mitigation, coupled with disaster risk reduction strategies, could positively contribute towards reducing the impact of climate change. The result, of course, a reduction in loss and damage, especially from slow onset events. And climate change is not something that you see overnight. Climate change is not something you wake up in the morning and the sea levels are going to rise by 1 meter. It's going to happen over 20, 30, 50, 70, 100 years. So the impact over that type of time frame in an incremental way is in many ways harder to manage and plan for than something that happens very quickly and shocks change in the system. Over the last 5 years, especially as negotiators worked via the Comprehensive Bali Action Plan, support from countries representing every region of the world ensured that gender considerations were included in nearly every key aspect of climate change through recent COP outcomes, from adaptation and RED to gender balance on boards such as the Green Tech Climate Funds, to knowledge sharing, education and capacity building. Progress is being made on all fronts. IUCN's inclusion, in particular, of gender-based inclusion is critically important to make sure that all aspects of the community and of society are included in these long-term, potentially devastating issues that we need to get our heads around, our minds around, and our cities and towns around now. Nick Anthony here on Going Green, show number 99. Stay tuned, I'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back, Nick Anthony, talking about IUCN and the COP19 climate change discussions taking place in Warsaw this week. And IUCN making strong recommendations as a part of climate change awareness that gender-based inclusion is also a critical part of this process. In many countries in the world, women in particular and minorities do not have a voice. They do not have a say in how to manage and prepare our environments for what's coming down the barrel of an extremely large gun. Progress in understanding the intrinsic nature of advancing gender equality is a prerequisite to sustainable development, and the transformative co-benefits each can provide to the other has been profound. And yet ensuring that gender equality issues are rooted in the architecture for the post-2015 climate change regime is critical for this event in Warsaw, COP19, as well as next year's COP20, which of course is already being planned. Beyond global negotiations, interpreting those international mandates for national implementation, we're talking about countrywide programs, will be crucial. The IUCN have recently set up something called the Global Gender Office, and it's poised to support countries through this process, as it has begun to do in more than a dozen countries already. Countries will also know how they score on implementation when IUCN launches this week its newest innovation, the first ever Environment and Gender Index. And of course what it will show is in countries where women, for example, do not have a say, or minorities do not have a say, that the environmental implementation of these programs is talking to only one part of the population, only one part of the country. Climate change discussions needs to be fully inclusive. It needs to include all members, all societies in all the country. That's something we're doing here with Seek locally, is in a very limited way, in a local way. For example, in Kamala Beach, with the Kamala Green Club, we're working very hard to include all of the community. So we work there with the local Obator, we work with the local Puyai, who's the village chief. We work also with the volunteers, such as Nevnet, who do commercial recycling. We work with all of the businesses, such as Tesco, 7-Eleven. We work with the hotels, and in a place like Kamala, that includes everyone from Andara to Parisa to Cape Siena. We have a Swiss hotel, a number of the small hotels like Papa Crab. And then we also work down to a local level with the restaurants, whether it be Olala or Rockfish. We work with groups such as the community. And of course, in a place like Kamala, we have both Buddhist and Muslim communities, so we work with them, work with the mosque, we work with the temples, we work with the monks. And we also work with just the local people living in the communities to teach them about recycling. It has to go down to a very grassroots level. And where we're finding our successes, particularly here on Phuket, are coming, is that we've been inclusive from a bottom-up perspective, and at the same time with groups such as IUCN, who we've just been talking about, as well as the WWF, the World Wildlife Fund. We've been able to bring best case international information that's been thoroughly stress tested, thoroughly put into place, and bring that down to a small local community. And through that, we've been able to, with an open discussion on climate change, consider the planning for these changes that are taking place. I'm going to give you one example in Kamala. Kamala is planning on putting in a new water treatment system. Currently, all of its drains and all of its sewage systems are small-based local programs. They're not centralized, and there's approximately a $15 million program to build a massive sewage treatment plant in Kamala. It'll be a hub and spoke, meaning a central operation, and spokes going around the outside with smaller treatment plants that feed back in. Now, if we don't plan for climate change and the expectation that sea level is going to rise by 1 meter perhaps over the next 50 years, then as soon as we build it, within 10 years it's going to be obsolete. And the cost in 15 or 20 years' time of ripping that up and putting in a new system is going to cost a lot more and be a lot more disruptive. So locally, climate change is an important aspect of the decisions we're now making on infrastructure, on town planning, and the way that we build our properties, build our homes, build our condominiums, build our hotels. They need to be considered. Nick Anthony, with you here on Going Green, show number 99. Stay tuned. I'll be back in just a few moments. Nick Anthony, back with you on Going Green, show number 99. You can follow me on Twitter, if indeed you are on Twitter. My name there is Indigo Nick, and I do retweet many of the breaking stories over the week. We look at local stuff as well as the big international news from around the planet. If you're on Facebook, you can follow any number of the green clubs now around Phuket, all the way from Naiton Green Club. You've got Bangtao Green Club. You've got the Nayang Green Group. Green Nayang Group. Then you've got Kamala Green Club. You've got the Patong Green Club. Kata Green Club, Kata Noi Green Club. And coming soon will be Rawai and also Chalong Green Club. So great news. We've also got 2 green clubs coming in from the universities. One from Phuket Ratchabat University. They will be looking after the Rasada area. And also this week, Prince Songkla University, PSU, has also announced that they will also be starting their first green club, which is really fantastic. So bringing us up to around 14 green clubs. The big one still to join will be Mai Khao under planning. And Patong has also had its first meeting. And you can check Patong Green Club also just going live. We've been able to now increase our radius with these green clubs. Boracay has just gone live over the last 2 weeks. It's Boracay Green Club in the Philippines. And we've also just this week signed up our first 2. One is in Krabi Province and one is in Phang Nga. Speaking of the Philippines, we of course this week had Typhoon Haiyan. It hit the Philippines and has destroyed massive swathes of the country. It's killed over 2,000 people. As of today, it's still a disaster zone. Leyte, which is the main island in the middle of the Philippines that got hit the hardest, and it's a town of 200,000 people called Tacloban, has been completely destroyed. There's looting, there's rioting, there's not enough food, but more of that in a moment, and we'll give you a complete update on that. But as Typhoon Haiyan hit the Philippines, Rajendra Pachauri, who is the IPCC chairman, the International Panel on Climate Change, has called for a grassroots movement to put pressure on politicians to act on climate change, just as we've been talking about now with a local movement such as the Kamala Green Club. It's local citizens who are being asked to step up and put pressure on governments to make sure that climate change is considered in things such as infrastructure, education, and for the planning for the future for all of us. The IPCC chairman says that if we don't do something, we will in fact pass on a lousy, spoilt, and defiled planet. Strong words indeed. But yesterday at the Princess Songkla University, we had a Korean environmentalist, Professor Jung, here talking to students about climate change, and his analogy was somewhat similar. He said that it's like our house is on fire and we're not putting any water on the roof to put it out. If we don't all battle this now, then indeed it may well be lost. The chairman of the UN Climate Panel has made this warning for many reasons. Firstly, he spoke out as Typhoon Haiyan slammed into the Philippines and, as we've seen, caused thousands of deaths and widespread destruction. And he said, while it was not possible to blame any single disaster on the steep rise in carbon emissions, the increased frequency of extreme weather events was consistent with scientific predictions. Speaking in Copenhagen, Pachauri criticized those who claim higher global temperatures would be beneficial to human society. While he said some countries may benefit in the short term, the impacts will be disastrous over time and hit the most marginalized communities. Pachauri called for a grassroots movement to put pressure on politicians to act, and warns that they risk the voters' wrath if they fail to respond. To the fossil fuel lobby that is seeking to maintain the status quo, Pachauri gives this message: it's the will of the people that at the end will be supreme. Message for all of us across Asia, and indeed all governments across Asia. Stay tuned. Nick Anthony here on Going Green, show number 99. I'll be back in just a moment talking about the IPCC chairman's comments made this week in Copenhagen. Going Green, show number 99. Nick Anthony with you here on this fine Saturday afternoon. We're talking about the IPCC, the International Panel for Climate Change, chairman's comments. And he was interviewed with a couple of very poignant questions, one of which was, what is your response to those who are still claiming climate change is not an issue, despite the latest IPCC report? He says that the projections of the IPCC Working Group report are very, very clear. The impacts are going to become progressively negative, and they're going to be the worst for some of the most underprivileged societies on Earth. Are we going to create a planet where there's tension, where there's conflict, where there's desperation? That's not going to help any one of us. Are we going to see islands disappear? Are we going to see agriculture and food systems being affected? Human health being affected? Absolutely yes. The evidence and the scientific assessment is so compelling. How can anyone close his or her eyes against that reality? The question to him was, what do you think has caused this disconnect? Is it that people fear the problem's too big, or that it is too far in the future to worry about? He says, there is a lot of inertia in the system, and much of it in our own minds. We're so wedded to our ways, we feel anything that's going to bring about a change is something that you can just postpone. You can just shelve some way or the other for the time being. I think it has much to do with human attitudes. But the other side of the coin is that you get enough of a consciousness to take action, and this feeling snowballs. Then you'll probably get action on an unprecedented scale, because I think human society has the means, the capacity, and the technologies to be able to bring about change in a radical direction, including changes in lifestyles, but we don't know when that movement will come. I really hope it's not going to be too late, because we don't have the luxury of time. We really need to deal with this problem as early and as effectively as possible. It's the will of the people that will be supreme, and I go back to the importance of creating awareness, creating understanding, particularly in democracies where people will demand action from every section of society, and certainly governments and the corporate sector. Very interesting article there published in The Guardian this week on sustainable business, and talking to the IPCC chairman, Mr. Pachauri. Of course, here on Phuket, we are seeing change. We are seeing momentum. We've got full-time beach cleaners on Kamala Beach. We've got now clean communities, clean roads, clean roadsides. You've got a governor here on Phuket who's action-orientated, who's interested, who's passionate, and feels Phuket in his heart. And it's the Phuket people, it's you, it's me, it's all of us that have to do our bit to make Phuket a better place. It's hard work because we're still the minority. It's hard work because there's a lot to be done. But collectively, change is happening. Change is happening in front of your eyes. You need to open them. You need to open your hearts. You need to feel the love of the planet and need to love nature as if it's one of your own. Nature is your child. If we defile nature, if we destroy nature and we destroy our island, we end up with nothing. We end up with no tourism. We end up with no business. And we end up with an island that nobody wants to come to. That's not the future we want. It's not the future I want. And I know it's not the future you want for your future generations. So on behalf of all Phuket people, let's all do our bit. Let's all do things better. Let's reduce our waste, reduce our plastic, reduce our car travel. Let's get off the grid. Let's stop burning carbon fuels. And let's try our best to do our best for our beautiful island. Stay tuned. Nick Anthony here on Going Green, show number 99. Welcome back. We've been talking about climate change and the COP19 UN climate change talks in Warsaw, as well as comments coming out of the IPCC chairman about the question, do we want to live in a defiled planet? Well, unfortunately for the Philippines, the super typhoon Haiyan was one of the most intense tropical cyclones at landfall on record when it struck the Philippines on November the 7th. It had maximum sustained winds at over 220 miles an hour. Over 2,000 people have now been killed. But a week later, access is still limited. Supplies are not getting through. And the area around Leyte is a total disaster area. The Philippine government and the UN admitted yesterday that both were unprepared for the disaster and are still struggling to get aid into the area. The first signs are appearing that, well, from here, of course, we've seen the U.S. military have gone in with a carrier. Also, the number of Asian countries have committed aid. Australia, America, China, a number of European groups, and here on the island, there has been local fundraising and local support for the Philippines from this disaster. So say a prayer for all our friends in the Philippines, and if you do have a chance to donate something, the Red Cross are accepting donations, and both money as well as clothes or supplies, and you can go here onto the Phuket News website with details on the type of fundraising and collections that are taking place. So thank you to all of those that have donated and have supported those in need in the Philippines. Talking of climate change legislation, I'm just going to change the pace a little bit. It seems that there are signs appearing that progressive businesses are gearing up to go into battle against the fossil fuel lobby. Of course, the fossil fuel lobby, massively funded, massively enfranchised in terms of maintaining its status quo, selling oil, selling coal, and selling natural gas. Of course, we want to move away from that. We want to move to a clean, low-carbon economy. We want to move to an economy globally that relies on the sun, that produces limited emissions, that stops burning coal. and we have a long way to go, but there is the first signs of strong movement coming through. Well, this week, the initial shot has been fired with the unveiling of a guide for businesses on how to lobby responsibly for climate legislation. It's called Guide for Responsible Corporate Engagement in Climate Policy, a Caring for the Climate report. It includes advice on putting pressure on trade associations to stop sabotaging political change, for example, by publicly challenging their positions or resigning their membership. Environmental change is accelerating and generating new and emerging challenges, but also opportunities for business. Companies that face up to these realities are likely to be the ones that survive and indeed thrive in this rapidly evolving world, where factors such as climate change and dwindling availability of natural resources will shape future patterns of profit and loss, while driving new and smarter markets. That was a comment coming out of Achim Steiner, who is the UN Environment Program Director. What's particularly interesting is that an unusual coalition of 8 major organizations, ranging from UN agencies and NGOs to industry bodies, have joined forces to collectively publish their recommendations. This is likely to be followed by major corporations coming together in coming months, raising their heads above the parapet to collectively confront those companies seeking to maintain the status quo. Steve Howard, who is the Chief Sustainability Officer at IKEA, which is supporting the report, said it was time for companies that have traditionally shied away from political activity to throw their hats in the ring. He said that the lobbying report was aimed at ensuring that companies are consistent in their messages internally to the public and also to governments. As an example of direct engagement activities, they suggest lobbying government officials, contributing to electoral campaigns for green candidates, providing testimony endorsements, and participating in government agency working groups, participate in public-private partnerships, and participate in national or international forums on trade technologies. In an indirect way, of course, public relations campaigns targeting customers, suppliers, and the general public contribute to NGOs, groups such as Seek that are trying to do such a fantastic job locally, become a member of trade groups and business associations such as Rotary and Patong, learn from them how green business is being done. Former employees are taking jobs as government officials or corporate hiring of former government officials to teach and to maintain sustainability programming. And also, in particular, a call to action. Convene and set examples with customers, suppliers, your competitors, and the public. And, of course, participate in both scientific and economic committees. That's a report out of The Guardian. You can go today to myseek.org, click over to today's radio show, and you'll find a full transcript of today's Going Green show with links to these various articles and also a full transcript of these articles. Nick Anthony, stay tuned. We'll be back with Going Green, show number 99. Welcome back. Nick Anthony here on Going Green, show number 99. We've been talking about climate change in particular for this first hour of the show, but I'm going to move across to food waste, which is a topic that's very close to my heart. I've been working with the government on trying to map out a new strategy for waste management here on Phuket. For those who have an interest in waste, which really should be all of us, we've been given an opportunity with a blank piece of paper to redraw Phuket's waste vision. We've drawn inspiration and indeed programs out of the Scottish Government's Zero Waste Programme, an amazing program, and you can take a look at it on the website. That's Zero Waste Scotland. There was a very good article that came out this week talking about a new initiative in the UK where there's a national campaign aiming to stop all food being put into landfills by 2020. This could save the UK £17 billion and heat over 600,000 homes a year. Food producers, retailers, restaurants and consumers are being urged to join forces to secure a ban on all food waste going into landfill by 2020. Compulsory collections of food waste from all homes and businesses by local councils are among a series of measures recommended in this new report to enable food waste to be harnessed as a valuable resource to provide energy, heat, and benefits for agriculture. This interesting and very ambitious program, Vision 2020, a UK roadmap to zero food waste, is the culmination of more than 2 years' work and has the backing and input of local authority and industry experts. A report from the government's Waste Advisory Group shows that Britons were chucking out the equivalent of 24 meals a month, adding up to 4.2 million tons of food and drink every year that could have been consumed. Half of this is going straight from fridges or cupboards directly into the bin. Amazing. 1/5 of what households buy ends up as waste, and around 60% of that could have been eaten. At the same time, you've got groups like Tesco, which is UK's biggest retailer, agreed to reduce its multi-buy items and other promotions after revealing that 35% of its bagged salad was being thrown out. Tesco also found that 40% of apples were wasted and just under half of all bakery items. This new report highlights where and why food waste is happening at every stage in the UK supply chain, what actions are being taken to tackle food waste in each sector, and what more can be done in the future to drive the positive environmental, economic, and social outcomes. A fantastic campaign. Here in Phuket, we probably have about 40% of our daily waste, which is currently over 750 tons per day, is organic and compostable. So this will be part of the program that Phuket will also be implementing as its zero waste program. Now, if you're interested in zero waste and indeed the island sustainability plan, do come to Outrigger Resort this Friday, starting at 1 in the afternoon for about 4 hours. We'll be discussing the island's big picture sustainability plan. We're looking at everything from energy to waste, water, education, looking at issues such as the green clubs, clean beaches, and encroachment, as well as talking about the necessity of preparedness for climate change, just like we've been talking in the first hour of today's show. It's going to be a great show. We do require an hour's fee, but there'll be standing room for anybody who wants to come over a little late. From 1 in the afternoon till 5 in the afternoon on Friday, this will be a presentation to local government, NGOs, communities and businesses of a new sustainability plan for Phuket, which is all-encompassing and is a roadmap for our own future. A future we want. A future which is about a green and clean Phuket Island. A future where nature is put as number one, not profit. Stay tuned. Nick Anthony, back in just a moment. And Nick Anthony, back with you here on Going Green, show number 99, Saturday afternoon. I hope yours is a fantastic one. We've been following the last month out of Russia, the effectively abduction and arrest of Greenpeace activists who were in the Arctic campaigning against Russia's drilling of the Arctic and the potential massive environmental problems that any spill, problem, damage, explosion may cause. You'll be aware that they were arrested. They've been held currently in Russia effectively on terrorism charges that's now been downgraded. However, they are still under lock and key. There is still no agreement from the Russian government on exactly what they're going to do with them, or indeed what they're going to be charged with. The piracy charges that they were initially laid against them have been lessened to hooliganism, which carries a maximum jail term of 7 years. However, as yet, that term has not yet been committed, and there's been a massive outcry all over the world to President Putin to release the activists and to realize that they've made a mistake in indeed even charging them for hooliganism. Well, this week, former Beatle Paul McCartney has written to President Vladimir Putin in a bid to try and help get the Greenpeace protesters, the Arctic 30, home with their families in time for Christmas. The 30, which is 28 Greenpeace activists and 2 journalists from 18 countries, were arrested in September after a peaceful protest at Gazprom's oil rig. Now, Paul McCartney says that the president has not yet replied, but that the Russian ambassador kindly responded saying that the situation is not properly represented in the world media. and we'll take that with a grain of salt. And, of course, there are two sides to every story, and the Russians are going to be looking after their oil interests. And just as we've been talking about in the first part of this show, there's pressure now on governments to reduce their carbon footprint and come up with a low-carbon economy. That does not include drilling in the Arctic for oil and the potential massive damage that it will cause. Let's take a listen to the letter that Paul McCartney's written to Vladimir Putin. Dear Vladimir, I hope this letter finds you well. It's now more than 10 years since I played in Red Square, but I still often think about Russia and the Russian people. I'm writing to you about the 28 Greenpeace activists being held in Murmansk, and I hope you'll not object to me bringing up their case. I hear from my Russian friends that the protesters are being portrayed in some quarters as being anti-Russian, that they were doing the bidding of Western governments, and that they threatened the safety of the people working on an Arctic oil platform. I'm writing to assure you that the Greenpeace I know is most certainly not an anti-Russian organization. In my experience, they tend to annoy every government, and they never take money from any government or corporation anywhere in the world. Above all else, they are peaceful. In my experience, non-violence is an essential part of who they are. I see you yourself has said that they are not pirates. Well, that's something everyone can agree on. But just as importantly, they don't think they are above the law. They say they're willing to answer for what they actually did. So could there be a way out of this, one that benefits everybody? Vladimir, millions of people in dozens of countries would be hugely grateful if you were to intervene to bring about an end to this affair. I understand, of course, that the Russian courts and the Russian presidency are separate. Nevertheless, I wonder if you may be able to use whatever influence you have to reunite the detainees with their families. 45 years ago, I wrote a song about Russia for the White Album, back when it wasn't fashionable for English people to say nice things about your country. That song had one of my favorite Beatles lines in it. Been away so long, I hardly knew the place. Gee, it's good to be back home. Could you make that come true for the Greenpeace prisoners? I hope, when our schedules allow, we can meet up again soon in Moscow. Sincerely yours, Paul McCartney. And with that, let's play for you Back in the USSR, the Beatles. Nick Anthony back with you. I hope you enjoyed that Beatles song, Back in the USSR, and a big shout out there to our Greenpeace activists. Stay strong, stay healthy, and I'm sure relief will be there shortly. There's enough of an international storm to put pressure on Vladimir Putin. Let's take a quick look at local news and a quick review of the Phuket newspaper. It's available in newsstands around the island for 20 baht. And first article I'm going to mention is on page 11, talking about pets. And this is an article that I wrote about my princess sausage, who was a soy dog, been with me for 12 years, and a very sad week last week as she passed away with a tumor. She was greatly loved, she's greatly missed, and it just goes to show what a wonderful heart these street dogs have, Thai dogs in general have. They deserve to be loved, they deserve to be looked after, and a big thank you to the Soy Dog Foundation here on Phuket, to many of my friends and family that have taken in soy dogs and really given them their heart, given them their home, and made them feel like a part of the family. Soy Dogs for the last 12 years have been sterilizing dogs across the island to limit the dog population. They've been amazing at taking off street dogs and fixing mange, fixing up broken legs, helping dogs who get lost reunite with owners, and also they've been involved in relocating soy dogs all over the world. And the bottom of page 11, there's an article there called Soy Dog Stories, and there's an update on adoptions from the shelter. Just this last month saw another Super 6 getting to the UK with regular flight volunteers, Zat and Izzy, Annie Fran, Daisy, Alpha, Lil Scooby, and Zanzas. They all made their way via Bangkok and Amsterdam to their new homes in the UK. We wish them and their new families all the happiness in the world. If you want to be a hero on your next trip overseas and make a difference to a dog or cat or two from Thailand, if the answer is yes, then please consider participating in Soy Dogs' Flight Volunteer Program. Adopted animals can travel with a passenger as accompanied baggage. The advantages to this is a reduced cost compared to the animal traveling as cargo. It's less stress on the animal, as they can be with a passenger up until close to boarding time, and all of the pre-flight arrangement are handled by Soy Dog. You can contact Belinda at Soy Dog Foundation. That's Belinda at soydog.org, or take a look at this weekend's edition of the Phuket News on page 11, and those details are there. So a big shout out to all our friends at Soy Dog Foundation. We love you guys. You do an amazing job. And Princess Sausage, travel well. We will see you at the Rainbow Bridge. If you've lost your pet and you're looking for some solace, go to the internet and do a Google search for Rainbow Bridge. There's a story about indeed how you will see your dog on the other side. It'll be waiting for you at the Rainbow Bridge, wagging its tail with a big smile on its face, and will be with you for eternity. So a big prayer goes out to my own Princess Sausage, and thank you to all our friends and supporters who've sent so many wonderful wishes and comments over the last week. It's much appreciated. Tomorrow, Sunday, that's November the 17th, is Loy Krathong Festival. It's going to be muted this year in deference to the mourning period for His Holiness Somdet Pra Nyassamvara, who was the Supreme Patriarch of Thailand, who died on October the 24th at the age of 100. As a result of that, none of the island's municipalities will be organising Loy Krathong festivities tomorrow, with the usual concerts and beauty contests. Private organisations, particularly hotels, will be organising events, but these too are likely to be quiet, reflective affairs, restricted to launching the Loy Krathong in the sea or in swimming pools, and making a wish. The history of Loy Krathong in Thailand goes back to the Sukhothai era, and is based on a Brahmin ceremony in which floating lanterns were launched in praise of the Hindu gods Brahma, Narayana, and Shiva. Thais adopted the ritual and have given it Buddhist overtones. One of my favourites every year is to go to Laguna on the lake. I'm sure they will be doing it on Sunday. So do, if you get a chance, go and check it out. I'm just wrapping up here on the local news. On page 4 in the paper is an article about a Canadian being arrested for smuggling coral. This is acting from a tip-off. A 59-year-old Canadian was arrested for smuggling coral into Thailand. Coral is protected either from smuggling it in or indeed from smuggling it out. Coral deserves to be left in the sea. We have a hard enough time maintaining the quality of our reefs, the quality of our ecosystem, and without people stealing it to put into aquariums. Also, local news on page number 2 in Life section is a great idea, a recycled bottle being used on the table for paper napkins. Take a look at that, brought a smile to my face. And if, like you don't like to go to a restaurant and you see a toilet paper, a toilet roll on the table, this is a smart way to utilize a plastic bottle and to produce something a little bit more interesting. Briefly, the PSU conference took place on Thursday, Friday. It's Princess Songkhla University had their open day. It was a really fantastic event. Hundreds of students took part. There was recycling, games. SEEK had a marine litter display going on. It covered hospitality and tourism, their international studies, and their science, engineering, and technology programs. Next weekend, Kun Nok from SEEK is writing an article in the paper about this open day, and a big thank you to Kun Chantani, one of the organizers, and her team for a well-prepared, coordinated, and executed 2 days. Kids of Phuket are our future, and straight-talking discussions of these major issues is critical. So thanks again to PSU for putting on such a fantastic event. Well, that's about it. I'm out for time this afternoon. I hope you've enjoyed our show. Do stay tuned for a fabulous weekend of music. Of course, coming up now after Going Green, we have non-stop music through to 6 p.m. Saturday Night Fever comes on at 6 through till midnight. And then tomorrow morning we have breakfast classified from 9 till 11. Sunday brunch with Jason's on from 11 until 2. Asia Pop 40 with Dom Lau from 2 till 5. Mellow Moments with Andy Saunders from 5 to 7. Chill Factor with Colin Hansel from 7 till 9. And a Sunday chill from 9 until midnight. So following Jason's show tomorrow afternoon, a very chill Sunday afternoon. I do hope yours is a fantastic weekend. I hope you've had a chance to take part in some of the great programs around the island. If you're here as a visitor or if you're living on Phuket, get involved in a beach clean. If you see litter on the side of the road, do your bit and help pick it up. We all work together. We're going to be looking forward to a wonderful, clean and green Phuket Island. Stay tuned. Nick Anthony. Next Saturday I'll be talking about the Seek Sustainability Conference, and we're going to be coming to you live from Central Festival next weekend. That's next Saturday, 2 to 4, in front of Zen Restaurant. So if you're around that area, come down and say hi, and even make a shout out on the radio to your friends and tell us what you're doing for Green Phuket. Have a fantastic day. Nick Anthony signing out.